Hey, good morning, Fargo. 11:06 in the a.m. on a Thursday. It is Thursdays with Tony. Some nice weather out there. I want to say hi to one of my listeners, Dr. Gunderson. I hear you're a everyday or every Thursday listener, so thanks for doing that. And if you're so inclined, call in 701-293-9000. Email studio@wdayradionow.com. The second half of the show, we'll have Kelly Armstrong on, and we'll have him for 30 minutes, ask the questions. And please do call in and ask Kelly your questions. He's our congressman currently. He's running for governor. Pretty important spot. And just for the record, I do have requests with Tammy's people, Tammy Miller. I have spoke to their PR person, and they said they get back to me. So we're waiting on that, and we'll go from there. To begin the show, however, we're going to talk with Al Carlson, who is a longtime state legislator and is now running for Fargo City Commission. Al, thanks for being here.
You bet. Glad to be here.
I'm not going to ask you to tell us about you because you've been around for a while, and hopefully by now people know who you are. You have a record. How about that?
Well, it's like anybody that had any kind of elected office. You do have a voting record.
You do. Yep. So if you want to know who Al is, look up his voting record first, and we'll get more into the local issues here now. The one question I always like to start with, Al, is it's a two-parter. What do you think the top three issues in this election cycle are going to be for the Fargo residents? And if it's different, what do you think the people think are the top three issues?
First of all, we got to hope that the people stay engaged and get more engaged on the issues, because every day the city and whichever kind of a local government you have can do two things. It can do something to you or for you. Mm-hmm. And you hope it's not to you, it's for you. But I think getting back to the three issues, I think with
these yours or the city's?
Well, I think they're mine. And obviously, home builder. I'm a home builder.
Okay.
I'm concerned about the fact that it's very difficult to create affordable housing areas anymore in Fargo, North Dakota. Everything from the price of land to the price of the materials to build. Okay. Affordable housing is very difficult. We have to find as a way as a city how we're going to be able to house these people without putting everybody in an apartment.
Okay, great.
And I think that's a good. The second one that I think really resonates and it comes to the news every day is public safety. Okay. Whether it be safe neighborhoods, safe schools, those kind of things. I was really pleased to see that 12 new officers were installed. If elected, that's going to be an important part for me to dig into that and find out what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and what we need to do more of to make sure that our community is safe.
Okay.
That would be the top two on my list. The third one is to complete the projects we've done and making sure, I can tell you for a fact, and you probably own a house, but if you're anywhere around a lower area, you got to buy flood insurance. That's extremely expensive. We need to make sure that some of these areas that are being protected are now taken out of those zones, and people don't have to buy that expensive insurance anymore. So far, I'm just dealing with some lots that they said there was a part of it in the floodplain. They required me to do a lot of things with LOMR and tests that need to go away because the diversion is going to stop that. So there's so many things about the city, but public safety, really important. Affordable housing is really important. I can tell you, Tony, that having been around a few years now and been involved in a lot of things, we get all kinds of talk about the diversity of our population. What we need to make sure is that our city treats everybody fairly and not anybody specially. And if we can do that, then we've accomplished something as a city. And we have special problems with growth, and we have to address those. And the city needs to be on top of their game.
So that was your top three. Do you think those are the same top three for the voters, or do you think there's any differences?
I think that if you talk to most of the voters, they're going to agree with a lot of the things that I just talked about. If you're at all looking, if you're a young couple, just got a job, and you're both working, mom and dad are both working, and you're out looking for a house, you're finding a stick and shock. And I think it's important to them to be able to find neighborhoods that are safe. They kind of overlap, but neighborhoods that are affordable. And we as a city need to do that. So we need to help with that.
I think affordable housing is a big issue in the city of Fargo. I'm not sure I agree that those are the top three, but I will say that I do believe that affordable housing is definitely in the top three on the minds of the voters here in the city of Fargo. With that, we have to, of course, talk about incentives and assessments, because those all go towards the cost of your home. So let's start with incentives. Okay, if you build a new home, and let's say South Fargo, because that's predominantly where the new homes go, right?
Yep.
You get a 2-year tax abatement for that. So what that does in my mind is, one, it inflates the price of the home. People are willing to pay a little bit more for a newer home especially if they get an incentive and they don't have to pay those taxes for 2 years. Instead of buying, I live in North Fargo, up in the Roosevelt neighborhood.
Yep.
Okay. So those homes in that area are perfect for a young family, 2-bed, 3-bath, probably more affordable than a new home in South Fargo. People are not buying those older homes in North Fargo because of that incentive in South Fargo. Do you believe the incentive is still required here in the city of Fargo in order for people to get into those newer homes in South Fargo?
Well, I think that it obviously helps in the marketing. I've used that. I mean, I built houses. I haven't built any in that category in years, but should that program be expanded so that it deals with not only new houses, but used houses in attached neighborhoods, kind of like a Renaissance zone for housing? You know, do you look at that? Maybe yes, maybe no. But the point is, how do you get these people into those houses? We just lost a whole chunk of our market, Tony, because of the interest rates increase.
Sure.
I can point a lot of fingers at why they went up and who caused it.
Sure.
But the point is, you go from a 2% loan to a 7% or 8% loan, you just took out 25 to 30% of your buying public. Is that incentive probably more valuable today with the rise in interest rates? It probably is. Should it be tied to the interest rates? If they're too high, they maybe kick in and not. I don't have the answer till I dig into that some more. But I was at the state when we allowed that to be a local issue. It is a local issue. Those 5 commissioners are going to decide whether that program continues or not. I support that program, but I think it should be expanded and looked at a little more and adapted, because it's not 100% property tax relief.
No, it's $150,000.
There's a cap on it.
Yep.
And should there be more income requirements? There are a lot of state programs, by the way, that are involved in the new house, new home construction, or the first-time home buyers. We just need to saddle up. Sometimes we don't saddle up enough with the state to see if we can work together with them to get our younger people into these houses.
So I'm putting you in the I'm for the incentive for new homes category.
I'm for the incentive. I would want to look at it and make sure that do we need to expand it? Do we need to contract it? Are there certain neighborhoods that shouldn't be eligible? I'd take a look at that.
Yeah, the upside to it is obvious, right? Is to help that couple to get that into that new house, right?
I can also tell you that I built in North Fargo and I built in South Fargo. North Fargo's landlocked.
Yeah.
You know, it took me. I did a subdivision on 30th Avenue between 30th and 32nd, and it took me 3 years longer than I thought it would because there were less buyers in the north side of town.
And Al, I think that's because we're offering incentives in South Fargo.
Yeah.
I think it's much harder to sell a house in North Fargo.
I'm not so sure about that because we had incentives at that point in time, but the housing demand is down here where a lot of the activities are. That's not the fault of the developer in the south side of Fargo. That's where people want to live. And I do think that there would have been a real slowdown in South Fargo if they hadn't done something with flood protection, because people would have just said, I'm not paying $3,000 a year in flood insurance.
I think that's probably true.
Yep.
For businesses now, okay, this is a tough one because you want to bring in businesses to the city of Fargo. You want to be a pro-business city. However, we're seeing increase in property taxes, increase in special assessments. People are getting taxed out of their homes, basically. Then we turn around and we see a business receiving $1 million to expand their $500 million, company. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And to a lot of people, that just doesn't make any sense anymore. Now, maybe it did make sense, 20 years ago for a Renaissance zone in downtown Fargo. I think that worked. I think we won, Al. I think that's what we were trying to do, was get downtown to where it's at right now.
Yeah.
So do we continue the Renaissance zone and other incentives in downtown Fargo when the city of Fargo is dang near bankrupt? Or do we pull back those? Because the Renaissance zone, the state has now expanded the Renaissance zone to 8 years instead of 5 years. Do you think that was a good move?
It was only 5 when I was involved. I'm not sure.
It's true. But now it's 8, Al, and now you want to be a city commissioner.
I'm not so sure I would have gone to the 8-year. But I've always been, even at the state level, Tony, I believe in a cost-benefit analysis. Because if your payback and return after the 5 years for the next 30 or 40 years of that property or project doesn't pay back way more than you gave away, then all you did is to shift the tax burden to somebody else who has to pay, because government doesn't seem to spend less money.
No.
They still spend the same amount, but now less people are paying it because we took somebody off the table. So cost-benefit analysis, I'll vote no if they don't work out on paper.
The ROI, what I'll say with that, Al, is the ROI 20 years ago was like this, right? And now if we get that 5-year incentive, the return is like this, because it's so much more expensive to develop in downtown, right? So in order to get it back up, we have to offer 8 years instead of 5. So that ROI, yeah, you're going to get money when you put money in. but the ROI is so much more diminished, whereas that capital could be deployed elsewhere in the city of Fargo and fill in other places without an incentive. That's the ROI that I want you to consider.
Yeah, and I don't have any trouble with that because I've always been a cost-benefit analysis guy. If it doesn't work, because like I just said, all they're doing is shifting the tax burden to somebody else.
I agree with you.
It just, if they still spend the same amount of money, but I don't have to pay any more, somebody else has got to pay more.
All right. Al Carlson is running for Fargo City Commissioner. Be part of the show, 701-293-9000. Email studio@wdayradionow.com. On the other side of the break, I'll ask Al about special assessments for new and existing, or you can ask your question to Al. We'll see you on the other side of the break. Hey, welcome back to the show. Be part of the show. 701-293-9000. Email studio@wdayradionow.com. I'm Tony Garrett. This is Thursdays with Tony. I'm a former Fargo City Commissioner. I'm talking with Al, who wants to be your next Fargo City Commissioner. All right, Al, we talked about incentives. Let's talk about special assessments. There are two types of specials, one for new and one for existing, and they operate very, very differently. For the new homes, basically what happens for a new development, that you're going to build 100 homes, okay? City of Fargo will give you a $34 million loan to put up the road, the streetlights, the gutters, and everything else that goes into building a lot into a lot. And then that person comes in and buys that house, right? And then the incentive passes through the developer, and the new homeowner now gets that assessment. Yep. The developer doesn't necessarily even care how much that assessment is because he doesn't have to pay for it, right? Now, they care a little bit because they don't want their house to be too expensive so that people don't buy it. But we've seen assessments from anywhere from $50,000 to $75,000 for a new home if it's big enough, if the lot's big enough. I tell you that to tell you this. I don't think the city of Fargo should be giving a loan to a developer to develop land.
It's hard to argue that point, Tony.
No, I'm trying to get your feeling now.
On the other hand, how do you control the special assessments? Because the way of doing business seems to be that the city bonds for all these specials. They amortize it over, it used to be 15 years. Some of them were 10 years, 15. Now we get out of
30.
Now they're 30 years.
Yeah.
So that, in other words, you have a second mortgage on your house the day you start.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, you can't sell that house unless that goes with it or you pay them off.
That's right.
And if you pay them off, you can't sell it for that much more than your neighbor's house who left them on.
Right.
So it has been a catch-22, and it's becoming a real problem, especially with the jump in interest rates.
Yep.
Now, not only does it cost a lot more for your mortgage, it
Right.
costs a lot more for your P&I. And the third part of the wheel that's really a problem is that the property taxes and the assessments continue to climb. And they say the mills stay the same, but if my house is assessed for $20,000 more, I'm going to pay a lot more tax no matter what about the value of my house is, what I could really sell it for.
I could tell you a lot of reasons why assessments are bad for the homeowner buying that home. I'm not going to get into that because that's kind of for people to decide for themselves, right?
Yep.
What I'm telling you is I believe it's a bad deal for the city of Fargo to take on that debt. We are literally $600 million as a city of Fargo in debt just for special assessments. That's not counting our other debt. With our other debt, we're $1 billion in debt.
Yep.
We're 35,000 people here in the city of Fargo. I don't even want to do the math on the per taxpayer debt that we're in right now. And the city of Fargo has been deficit spending for the last 4, 5, 6 years on their budget. My question to you is, should the city of Fargo be playing the bank in order to help that developer get those developments going so that they don't have to take out that loan?
Well, there's two ways to do it. You can tell a developer we're not doing it. We're providing the specs. Yep. Let him put in his services. Let him hook onto your city sewer. Let him hook onto city water. Have him do the curb and gutter in the streets, and have him do the street lights. First of all, it'd probably be less expensive.
If he's paying for it,
if he had to pay for it, it'd probably be less expensive.
Yeah, I agree with you.
It will limit the number of developers quite a bit because you need a pretty good bottom line to do that. Is that the wrong way to do it? There's some people that have developed some land out in Mapleton. They paid for all the improvements.
They did it up here at Cardinal Minch.
Yep. And can it be done? Yes, it can be done. Should it be done? I think it's a really good avenue to look at.
Yes, we should. Okay. All right, thanks.
I know you should, but is it
going
to stifle the opportunity for a regular guy like me who just wants to do a small development, say that I don't have the net worth, I can't do it? That's the other side of the coin.
I mean, that's the argument. That's the argument. I think that's the only argument that you can make, right? Okay,
but
that's fair.
You can also change the specs. The city, do we need everything built like an interstate highway? I mean, there's some of the things that drive the costs up.
Yep, sure.
Should the city engineer get a certain percentage off the top of this? Or should, if there's extra revenue after all the specials are collected for the year, they should be automatically paid right down on the debt against the specials? I'm not so sure that happens today.
We transfer $1.5 million a year from that special assessment fund to the general fund. That's where it goes.
Well, and that's not right.
I agree with you. It's not right.
That's not right.
When I found that out, I was pretty loud about it.
Yep.
Okay, so for existing, the price of revamping 32nd Avenue is $13 million in assessments or whatever it was, right? So again, you're taking a large swath of the area. You're charging people. I'll use North Broadway for example. Okay, when we did the North Broadway project, you had houses get assessed $20,000 for a 3-bed, 2-bath house on North Broadway just south of Hornbachers, right? Many of those people had their houses paid off. They were maybe your age, and they were retired, right? And now we just handed them a $500 a month bill through special assessments until they die, right? And for the next 30 years, unless they have the money in their pocket to pay it off, we just handed them another mortgage. In your opinion, do we use specials for existing infrastructure properly, too much, or should we look at reducing or getting rid of them?
There is no other way to do some of these older neighborhoods, because if you went and asked each of the neighbors, will you pay $400 or $500,000, or you pay $1,000, $5,000 to fix a street in front of your house? You know what the answer is going to be? No.
We clearly know.
Yeah, especially in the older part of town, and you have to upgrade some of that infrastructure. That is, to me, that's more of a problem than the new area, because you have to continue that, or you've got some real problems with everything deteriorating. You pay me now, you pay me later. How you pay for it? I think you don't have many choices on that side. I don't think you have to. But again, what are the specs? What are the costs? How much is the city taking off the top of this?
Yeah.
And all those things drive it up. And this retired guy, I can tell you that I live along 25th Street South, and my specials today, 15 years later, are just about as high as when I built my house because of all the things they add on to it. Is that right? It's probably not right, but they redo 52nd Avenue. I'm close enough that I get paid. I get charged.
Well, I'll tell you what, Al.
And nobody complains. Nobody goes down to these meetings to speak of.
That's
so
true.
the process needs to be looked at, Tony. I would never disagree with that. But you have to have some method of funding the existing infrastructure.
Clearly. And what I've argued is that it's more useful to have a low, predictable, sustainable tax than a tax that can be dumped on your lap for $20,000 out of the clear blue. 'Cause I'll guarantee you 99% of those neighbors had no idea that was going to happen to them when it did. And I have a plan to make that happen, Al. I'll send you the plan if you want it.
You bet. I'll always take a look at things. New ideas are what this thing's all about.
2 minutes left, Al. Open mic night has been on the news lately, and you know I'm talking about the open mic period before the meetings.
Yep.
Do you support having that open mic period at the beginning, or are you happy with the changes that were made? That they made?
You know, I went down and watched the other night. I went to the meeting, and there was probably 35, 40 minutes of people dealing with Gaza, and they have a right to speak. I do think that it should probably be tied to the issue during the meeting. So I say try it, and if it doesn't work, don't do it. And just being we're kind of running out of time, I just think when you talk about voters and you talk about voting for a city election, there's a difference in philosophy. This is it's considered a nonpartisan race.
Yeah.
And you and I both know that it's not. We have philosophies that align with political parties or not. I'm a common sense conservative guy, a limited government guy. And if you ask the other ones, they've got to tell you what they are, except they don't want to. They don't want to because that tells them that they like more government and more programs. Well,
I think that's probably usually the case.
Yeah, take care of those who can't take care of themselves. This is the role of government.
Yep.
But you don't need to take care of those who can take care of themselves. So there is a difference. There's a huge difference in how you view the way the city should be run. I'm a conservative guy that will make sure I'm a watchdog of the budget. I was always a budget guy in my previous career, and I'll make sure with people like you feeding me information that I'll be guarding the budget, the tax dollars of the citizens.
Okay, well, I'll send you that document. I'll throw it on your Facebook or your email, whatever you want me to do. But thanks for being on the show. Al Carlson is running for Fargo City Commission. Thanks for being on the show, Al, and probably talk again soon.
Oh, you bet.
Okay. All right, folks, on the other side of the break, we'll have on Kelly Armstrong, who's your current U.S. Congressman for the state of North Dakota, and the candidate for North Dakota governor. Ooh, that was a tough one. I'll see you guys on the other side of the break. No, he's on the phone. Hey, welcome back to Thursdays with Tony. I'm your host, Tony Gehrig. You can see us live on Facebook and YouTube. Our next guest will be interesting. Kelly Armstrong is a U.S. congressman for the state of North Dakota, and he's now running to be your governor of North Dakota. Kelly, thanks for being on the show today.
Oh, thanks for having me. We saw you on Facebook that we reached out, then I think we forgot to reach out again, so I'm glad this worked.
Well, you beat Tammy, so kudos for that. So I asked you both to be on. You got back to me first, so I appreciate that.
I actually try to beat everybody at this stuff.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to go. And I did listen to the debate, and I did listen to how you say you campaign, and that's kind of that face-to-face. So I think I appreciate that very much. So in watching the debate, I learned two major things, Kelly. One, you're seen as the establishment guy, the experience. I won't say the establishment. I'll say the experience guy. How about that? Is that more fair? You're the experience guy, whereas she's trying to say, hey, I'm a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company, and therefore I know how to lead people. Do you believe that being a CEO of a large company qualifies you to be governor of our state of North Dakota?
I for sure don't think it's necessary. That would put it down to about 5 people. And I don't think North Dakota was built by large corporations. I don't think it was built by corporate America. It was built by guys like my dad, who started a business in Dickinson and kept investing in, wrestling clubs and Little League ballparks and Main Street businesses. And I know a ton of family farmers and a ton of small business owners that would be really great at being the governor in North Dakota.
Very good. You guys spoke quite a bit about the legacy fund. I'll be upfront right away. I was looking for the distances between you and her. The how you guys are different. Where's the light between you two? Because obviously you're both Republicans, right? So you're going to have a lot of similarities in what you believe. But I believe there's a lot of leeway within that spectrum of being a Republican. And one of those things was with the legacy fund. Tammy spoke a lot about reinvesting and incentivizing certain areas of our economy, whether it's small businesses or large businesses or nurses or whatever it was. She spoke a lot about investing in certain things. One of the things that you said was a priority of yours with the legacy fund would be to, I think you said, reform or reduce property taxes. Can you expound on that? Because I guess I wasn't quite sure exactly what that meant for me.
No, I don't think to be honest, I don't think the legacy fund, I think we need to reform and reduce property tax. I mean, I think those are two different questions, okay, Tony, because, let's start with property taxes, if that's okay. The state actually pays for about a third of all the property taxes roughly everywhere. And we've tried to do a lot of things with that, whether it's transparency on the top of on the statement, taking social service mills. The problem is nobody cares about what it says on the top of the statement. They care about what it says on the bottom of the statement. Mm-hmm. And if the state, I'm a huge local control guy. You're a former city commissioner. But if the state is dealing with a third or taking a third of the property tax burden off of municipalities, it's about time we start. We've done a ton of carrots. They haven't worked. Mm-hmm. We're going to have to start talking about sticks. Because people are, if this ballot measure gets on and everything goes, a different way, I'm just assuming they haven't turned the signatures in, but it is the number one thing I hear from every end of the state to the other. And it's everybody from local chambers of commerce to city commissioners to everybody. And we got to figure out a way to do it because it is the single biggest burden on North Dakota's minds. And I think one of the ways we're going to just have to really have a conversation about caps, I think 2%. But in order to do that, you served on that. We're going to have to meet with everybody and explain where we're at. If you want to take advantage of the third the state is buying down, we're going to put some parameters on that because everything else we tried hasn't worked.
Yeah, I believe that a lot because I think what you've seen, I think what you mentioned during the debate even was when you give a certain amount of money to the city, for example, of Fargo, to buy down, if you will, a larger portion of the property taxes. What does the city do? They just increase the property taxes to meet that buy down. So therefore we kind of double dip in that. 701-29.
Well, they give it to people who don't need it. They give it to people who don't need it. That's what's so frustrating.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. 701-293-9000. We're here with Kelly Armstrong, who's running for governor. He's your current U.S. congressman for the state of North Dakota. You can email us, studio@wdayradionow.com. Let's stick with the property tax idea here, okay? If the initiative measure has its language, so if it passes, you as a governor are kind of tied, right? Because it's telling you pretty specifically what you must do as the executive with that initiated measure, with that new amendment to our state constitution. So one of the ideas from the legislators was, hey, let's head this off. Let's make our own kind of idea of what we should do with property taxes so that we have control over what that language is. Then Governor Bergen came up with this idea of, or maybe he didn't come up with it himself, but he was more supportive of the idea of, hey, instead of this messiness of getting rid of property taxes, let's just end the income tax. So Kelly, are you for ending property taxes? Are you for ending income tax? Are you for both or neither? Where do you stand on those on that issue of, hey, if we're going to reduce a tax, let's reduce this tax?
So this is a perfect example of why you have to get out and listen to people, and that's how you have to campaign. And the reason is because, I'm sure I'm good with lowering every tax, 100%. Like, you can lower a tax. I'm interested in lowering a tax, but I'm just telling you, I have not heard about the income tax anywhere I've been. It's just not something that is coming up. It's not something that is on the minds of North Dakota voters. So my answer is if you're going to take that revenue off the rolls that costs you the ability to actually do real property tax reform, then no, I'm not for it. Because I think if anybody isn't paying attention to what people are saying, the number one concern is property taxes. So that should be the number one concern of the legislature, and it should be the number one concern of the governor. I don't like the elimination of property taxes. One, I think far too many out-of-state people get a benefit without being here. Two, I grew up in Dickinson, North Dakota in 1983. We're still a commodity-based economy. I think we need reform. I think we need to lower it. I think we need to expand the tax base in an even and fair manner. But if that measure passes, we're going to have very little discretion at the legislature because we're going to spend the entire session, rewriting a significant portion of the code. I don't know how cost share would even work when you get rid of property tax.
So we'll go to commercial here in a few minutes. Give me an idea then, Give the voter an idea, not me. Give the voter an idea then of what that may look like, because you've done buy downs in the past. And I think I understand that you weren't a big fan of that.
I actually think the best thing we've done as a policy thing is the $500 this year because people can apply for it. I think they should have instigated it versus having to apply for it, but it's actually real meaningful relief. I think we've done a really good job at carrots. I don't think we've done a good enough job at sticks. And I think we're going to have to start talking about, and you can't get into the mill rate versus whatever. You can talk about 2% on the property tax budget.
Sure.
That's how I would approach it, because then you don't get into how they do mills in Fargo versus how they do mills in Leeds.
Right.
And I think the real answer is you have to get school boards and county commissioners and city commissioners in and say, guys, we're buying down a third of the property tax in your community. We need a stick on the back end. And building new houses, new economy, all of those things. But you shouldn't be pricing teachers or nurses or law enforcement officers or senior citizens out of homes. And that's really what people feel like is going on right now.
Yeah, the fear is always that if the state, it's just who's paying for it basically. If the state, gives us more money, then the city should not ask for that money from the taxpayers, but they do, and that's just the way it is. Last question I'll ask you before we head to a break here. South Dakota, bigger population than us, pretty similar, kind of who the people are, what the people do, jobs, and those type of things. Their budget has gone up a certain amount over the last 10, 15 years. North Dakota's budget has gone up 3-4 times what it was 15 years ago. Do you believe that we have a conservative budget here in the in the state of North Dakota?
Well, I think first I was part of some of that, right? We had a massive influx of growth at the front end of that. And we're talking about communities like Waterford City. If you go from 1,600 to 16,000, there's no upgrade to your water treatment plant. Just at the infrastructure and all of that. But no, we're growing at an unsustainable level. That is the reality. We're addicted to oil money. We have a legacy fund, which hopefully we can come back and talk about after the break, that is supposed to replace that. But not all bureaucracy is federal. It's easy to beat up on the federal government. I'm in the federal government, and I beat up on the federal government all the time. But we have to figure out how we stem this growth in our state budget, because it is. I understand why it went up at the front end, and a lot of those reasons are good. We had more people, younger people, more people staying, towns in my part of the state were dying are now great communities that offer future for everybody who graduates from high school there. But the sustained growth of this is impossible. I always make a joke. How do you make a conservative a liberal? Give them a surplus. Yeah,
no kidding. Well, I get it. Well, we've seen growth here in the city of Fargo as well, and our budget has reflected that. But we've gotten in trouble by doing things that aren't necessarily the role of local government. And I think that we're doing that at the state level at some point too, which then, does balloon the budget. But Kelly, we'll talk more about the legacy fund on the other side of the break here. We'll talk about maybe some incentives too. That's, that's near and dear to my heart. It's not only a local problem, it's also a state, I won't say problem, a state issue that will allow you to discuss and educate us on. 701-293-9000, email studio@wdayradionow.com. You can see us on Facebook, see us on YouTube, and we'll see you on the other side of the break. Welcome back to Thursdays with Tony. I'm your host, Tony Gehrig. We are here with Kelly Armstrong, who is a U.S. Congressman for the state of North Dakota. He's running to be your governor for the state of North Dakota. Want to be part of the show? 701-293-9000. Email studio@wdayradionow.com. We have about 10 or 15 minutes left with Kelly left, so we'll get right to it. Kelly, I don't vote a lot on social issues. That's not what drives me as a voter. Now that everyone's different, but I've been asking you a lot about, money and legacy fund and, that type of thing. There was one thing that caught my attention during your debate with Tammy Miller. And that was talking about schools and talking about things like, what should be banned, what should be allowed at the state level. And you are someone who, you said this many times, that you are a local control guy. In this regard, however, we're talking about things like, transgender athletes competing outside of their, the gender they are assigned at birth. When we're talking about things like pornography in school, libraries, it sounded initially like you said, hey, we should let the locals control that. Do you see how some people might think the state should be a part of that conversation?
I actually think the state should be a part of those two conversations. Okay. One, you have a North Dakota High School Athletics Association. They play all the other teams. I've coached girls softball and I've coached baseball and I've coached wrestling. Boys should not be playing girls sports. You should not be making life-altering medical decisions on a 13-year-old, period. I believe that. Pornography, absolutely. There are certain things you shouldn't have in your schools. I think when you get down to specific pieces and different things like that, I actually do believe in local control, and I believe that the best place is to do that. But no, there's absolutely a role for the state to play in a baseline of that. Same thing with, school choice or, those types of issues. Those all exist. The state should not abdicate its responsibility in its role in education. I just don't want an overbearing state government taking away from local school boards. Okay.
And that'll be the only social issue that I ask you about, because it kind of caught my eye
right?
for that.
You can't have Dickinson doing it and not Bismarck doing it, because they're going to play each other the next day.
Yeah, right on. Very good. Like I said, I am not a social issue guy. I am a very much a dollar and cents guy. So my next question will reflect that. When I go to the voting booth this year and vote for whoever I want for governor, I'm gonna look for the person who, one, is gonna rein in the budget somehow. And I'm not smart enough to tell you how to do that. I hope that you are, or that Tammy is, whoever decides to do that. And the second one is going to be, I want someone who's going to end some tax, pick a tax, income tax, property taxes. Is that more likely going to be you or Tammy Miller?
Well, I think if I was honest with you, they're much more interested in ending income tax, or at least they were at the beginning of the campaign, and I'm much more interested in significantly lowering your property tax. I mean, and reforming it, by the way. That's the part we skip. But, I mean, if we can do both, I'm all in. I just don't want to take a pot of money that could be significant towards property tax relief and box myself in April and say, well, I promised this on the campaign trail, so I'm not going to be able to lower property taxes as much because of income tax. Because I think in the choice between those two, I think it's clear from everybody I've been listening to on the campaign trail.
I think you're right about that. Property tax is definitely, at least here in Fargo, man, that's all I can speak to is Fargo. I never had anyone come up to me and say, hey, Tony, my sales tax is too high. They always came up to me and said, hey, my property tax are too high. So,
but also remember that, I mean, the amount of people in North Dakota who actually pay income tax, and some of it's psychological. When you pay your income tax, you write your federal check the same day you write your state check, right? Like nobody. I've never had one person really. In 5 years of doing this, but really in 2 months of doing this, I've not a single person come up to me and yell at me about income tax. I have had lots of people come up and yell at me about property tax.
Yep. If we have time, I want to talk to you about incentives, both at the state and the local level. But you made one difference between you and Tammy just now. Can you tell me any other differences? I was watching the debate, and that was specifically what I was trying to listen to.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, we talk a lot about partisanship, but I think one of the biggest, and I'd be actually offline sometime, I'd be curious about your take as a former city commissioner. I think government's at its worst when it's paternal. Like when it says, if you knew what I knew, you'd vote how I vote. If you just understood, if you just understood this, if you just understood that, how about it's the 21st century? Put it all out there.
Yeah.
We have $800 million of North Dakota taxpayer money invested in three funds that are called world markets, international markets, and developing markets. And when we ask what that money is for, they won't tell us. That's out of state. I mean, there's a whole separate part to in-state. But my wife's from Oslo, Norway. You can pull their sovereign wealth fund up online, which is significantly bigger than our legacy fund. And it'll give you a real-time accounting of every single place that fund is invested in the world. And I think North Dakota voters are smart. I think if you're trying to hide something from them, there's a reason for that. And I think instead of having a reason to hide something from them, you should just be open. We're invested in 23 banks in 12 countries that have signed net zero pledges. Like somebody's going to have to explain to me if I win why that is a good investment. We're investing against our own country, our own state's two biggest industries, which is ag and energy.
Before we get to Nate on the phone, who has a question for you, Kelly, my follow-up to that is Tammy Miller says you're wrong. If I could put it any other way, I would. But she says, no, we're very transparent. It's all online. Go get it. We're not hiding anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's online. We have $800 million invested in those three funds. I mean, there's no fund called emerging markets.
Right.
It's just not true, and they're not responding to open records requests. And these things are all. I mean, people want to see more transparency. So she could say they're transparent. The problem is they're just not.
Yeah, it's a problem with most government. Even here in the city of Fargo, we have so much information online. It's like, well, how do you even get to it? It's very difficult to have too much information and it's not categorized maybe correctly or whatever else.
Yeah, but that's not what this is.
Oh, really?
This isn't. It's all there. It's not. This is. Yeah. I mean, I'm a former lawyer. You can bury discovery by giving too much discovery.
Yep.
That's not what this is.
Okay.
This is what I think, and I'm pretty sure is that they signed confidential agreements, and they're saying that they can't release it.
Interesting. All right, Nate is on the phone. Nate, you got a question for Kelly Armstrong.
Hey, Rep. Armstrong, how you doing?
I'm doing well.
Well, my name is Nate Pullen, and I'm currently running for Fargo City Commission. I was there at Bruhala the day that we kicked you off for governor. Congratulations.
Thank you.
One thing I would like to bring up is how dangerous Rick Becker's property tax relief or freeze, how bad that measure is, because it might freeze property tax at a state level, but it's not going to freeze our franchise taxes, our sales taxes, lodging taxes. I don't think that the school boards will go for it. And I was wondering how come there isn't more transparency on that. And number two, hey, we're in the oil and gas business just like your family. We have over 200 wells with the mineral rights, and we do pretty good out in McKenzie and Williams County. And we've been in it since the 80s, and I've never heard something more glorious than hearing about income tax, how you guys might want to get rid of income tax.
Okay, Nate.
How bad would that be for the state of North Dakota getting rid of that oil revenue income tax? Because that's our income.
Thanks,
Yours,
Nate. It's just for the
mine,
nature of the
and
time.
everybody else in the oil and gas
Big game.
industry.
Go ahead.
Yep.
Thanks, Nate. We only got a few minutes left with Kelly Armstrong. Go ahead, Kelly.
Yeah, and I think one of the things, and by the way, I think all of these things still have to be paid for. That's one of my concerns with local communities. I mean, every brick and mortar store that is going to survive in any community in North Dakota, large or small, is going to have to participate in e-commerce. And if you completely take property tax off the table, you're giving municipalities either the worst thing is the gamesmanship and really high specials and different issues, or you're going to have to raise your sales tax, which is going to put a lot of our retailers in every community at a competitive disadvantage. The second thing is to be honest, I've been in the legislature long enough to know that Bismarck, Fargo, Grand Forks, and Minot are going to be fine. But if you're coming from a small community, I'll just pick Oaks, and you have to go every 2 years to the legislature to beg for your supper to pay for those things. I really, really wonder how that is going to work. I mean, they don't have a lawyer lobbyist for the City Commission of Oaks or the school board in Oaks, and so I worry about that a lot too.
And Kelly, I think that's the valid concern. In my opinion, that's the one downfall to what we're talking about. But I think we also have to recognize the frustration that the average person sees when they see the state flush with money.
100%.
And so you see what I'm getting at. So something has to be done. And that's why I said, for me personally, when I go to vote, it's going to be who's going to reduce that stuff the most. And if not totally end one of those things, you got to bring it way down, or else I'm still feeling like, okay, I'm in conservative North Dakota, but I'm paying taxes like I'm in New York.
Yeah, and I think some of that's a perception thing, and one of it is, I have a friend in Dickinson whose house went up 40% last year, 40% in his valuation. Mills didn't change, property tax didn't change, but his valuation went up 40%.
Exactly.
My friend is not interested in having a nuanced policy discussion on property taxes right now. When I told you earlier, he's when I've been yelled at by a lot of people about property tax, that's the best one.
Yeah.
Because when they know you personally, they have no filter and they get really, really angry. I agree with you, and that frustration exists. The best thing I can tell you or anybody listening to you is I've heard it. And I do not have the marketplace on good ideas. I have literally changed how I have viewed this campaign since I started, from the income tax to the property tax, because, I used to pick juries for a living, and when your jury is telling you something, you should listen. And right now, the North Dakota constituents are screaming for property tax reform and relief.
Representative Kelly Armstrong from the state of North Dakota is running for governor of the state of North Dakota. Kelly, thank you so much for being on the show, and I hope to talk to you again very soon.
Thanks for having me. All
right. That was Kelly Armstrong. You can see him, I'm sure, on his website and stuff. He's a great conversation. He's always honest. He's always very straightforward. And I just hope that we all decide one day that we're going to reduce or get rid of one of these taxes, because the state of North Dakota is flush with cash, and I'm not, right? So we'll see you on the others on next Thursday. Hopefully, Tammy Miller or something like that will be on the show. Always interesting guests. We'll see you next Thursday.